Okay, now is the time and place for the Finance and Investment Committee meeting of Vallecitos Water District on Monday, July 29th at 4 p.m. And I'll call us to order. We have Director Martin and myself, Director Sella here, along with staff, and we're going to start off by switching up the order of the agenda items, and we'll start with 4, and then work our way through. So I'll turn it over to you.
I'll just clarify. So if the committee's okay with it, we'll do item 4, the cap fee first, and then we'll do what's currently listed as number 1, the overhead rate, and then I guess it doesn't matter on the PERS and the cost of service levy. Those are just informational updates, but we'll take the cap fee first and then the overhead rate.
Okay.
So, and before I'll turn it over to, I'm not sure if it's going to be James in a second, but so we are going to be taking the cap fee for adoption to the full board on August 7th. So this is kind of the last opportunity for the Finance Committee to take a look at it, make whatever recommendations or share any thoughts you may have, and any recommendation, if you want to give us a recommendation that we can include into the staff report, that would be helpful. So with that, I'll turn it over to James.
Yeah, thank you. So just as a brief reminder before we get into the actual, it's only 3 slides. So this is the 3rd time we've come to the committee. We've staff, along with the general manager, have met with the BIA at least. Staff's met with them about 4 to 5 times, but I know Glenn's met with them at least twice, and then have been in constant communication with the BIA. With that, we've gone ahead and contacted our consultant, Karen Keys, and just as a reminder, Karen Keys is an expert in this field. She's done cap fees not only for us, for Livenhain in the past, for Otay Waters here for the city of San Diego, and a bunch of other municipalities, both in-state and out-of-state. And she, I don't know what her medical issue is. I have a suspicion what it is, but she's basically she's retiring. So, but she did commit to finish our study and City of Austin's metro fees. Those are 2 that she has left, and that's it. So she won't be at the meeting, unfortunately, and that's the reason why. She wants to be there, and she does. I did talk to her last week about kind of putting the final touches on the study, and she's committed to finishing it up. And I was kind of afraid that she may not be, because it has gone a little longer than we thought.
And as James mentioned, I've reached out to Mike McSweeney from the BIA on numerous occasions, offering to meet whenever he wants to meet, and he says they're reviewing it and they're working it through. Says he wants to meet with us this week, and I reminded him that our staff report is due this Wednesday to be on the agenda for August 7th. So he knows our timeline and hasn't come in to meet with us yet. We did meet with him once a couple weeks ago.
It's in the staff report that we're doing, like end of June or early July. I forgot what it was, but yeah, it's the last time we met. So
a couple of quick questions, just to get it cleared. They did ask for a 30-day extension 6 weeks ago.
Yep.
And we gave them a 30-day extension?
We did. It was going to be on the June 19th meeting,
the second
I think
meeting
it was.
in June. Yep.
The second meeting in June is when we had planned to bring it. They requested an extension, and we coordinated with you being president of the
So
of the board.
almost 2 months we've already extended it.
Yeah, it's been delayed.
And they haven't come back and given you anything?
Nothing
different.
Substantive,
Yep.
no.
And then, did someone, and I don't know who, it doesn't really matter, have a meeting with McSweeney 6 or 7 months ago and anticipated no change in the rates?
Yeah, so we clarified that. So McSweeney came in with their engineer, and which is Dexter Wilson, Steve Nielsen from Dexter Wilson, and we're talking about master plan methodology, master plan costs, and we went over the water and sewer CIP, and my exact words were, I'm not the finance guy, I haven't talked about debt or anything else, but just based on the master plan numbers, it appears that the water's going to go down a little bit and the sewer's going to go up a bit, and perhaps they're going to equal out to a very low difference in change. That's my exact words when we actually met with Mike, and we mentioned that. Kind of the first thing is, after the initial delay request, we actually met with the BIA, and Glenn was in the room also. We brought that up, and Mike said, yeah, I kind of remember that, but what I took away from that was no change. But it's not the whole context.
Good, thank you. Thank you for clearing that up, because
Yeah.
I'm sure that's going to come up on the 7th.
Yeah, and we in that meeting we reminded me, you're absolutely right, but we were just looking at this, and then we went over, here's the differences, kind of like we did with the committee. So this will be the 3rd time we presented it to the committee. There's not really much new, but we wanted to kind of show what the cap fee is made of. So with that, this is the kind of the pressure. We're trying to keep it simple, and it's in
Thank
that with it. So what you see is water up top, and the first thing is just current. And I didn't go in and try and dissect the current one because I don't want to try and recreate history on there. But we know exactly what we did in the master plan and what the cap fee is made out of. So if you look at it, I'll show it. Yep. So you got distribution, which is basically your water pipelines. Option A, option B, option C. The reason it changes is because the interest rates are different, and here's the interest rates for option A, B, and C.
Okay.
And that's the reason it changes, because everything's debt financed. Storage, option A, option B, option C. Pumping, option A, option B, option C. Our existing debt service, the primary, our primary driver of that is the Twin Oaks Reservoirs. The 33, we still have some debt service on, but it's mainly the 40. But we have debt service on both. And as you can see, that's why it's a static number.
Okay.
The shortfall, we've talked about the shortfall, kind of that's the roughly $9 million in shortfall that we have in the water fund. So the difference, obviously, just as a reminder, in the past, what was done in the past, it was an interest-only payment, essentially. This time, it's still the interest based on our rate of return is being assumed. However, it's a 20-year, is it 20, Mike, or 15?
20 from 2015.
Yeah, so it's really 15-year, it's a 20-year amortization. So for that.
So this shortfall, and correct me, the more I go through this in my mind, the more intricate it gets. The shortfall. When we looked with a whole different regime of power at the time, giving us numbers, they came to us with they had instituted a policy of density impact fees.
Yep.
Which didn't make any sense. It still doesn't make any sense. So I don't believe in density impact fees. However, the fees should have moved up a little even without that. It didn't because we didn't clarify it, but I'm just saying that it was 5 years since we'd done the last one, so they should have went up and they didn't.
Yeah, they went up only through the ENR index, only in this, like cost of living index. They only went up for that amount, and that's it, which didn't truly keep up with the cost of construction. But just to clarify, there was nothing in the old density impact fee that affected water. It was sewer only. So the water, the water portion was completely independent of the density impact fee, because it was really only for sewer. Because the whole premises of the density impact fee is we didn't have sewer treatment because there's no sewer treatment in the 08 master plan.
But again, we didn't increase the rates. The only thing we increased was the
index, the cost of it's construction cost index in this case.
Okay,
but
that's
it's like
right.
the cost of
We
living.
didn't look at raising it any more than that
No,
because,
no.
well, I can tell you why in my case, because I didn't understand it then. And no one ever came back to us and said, hey, there should have been some cost, even though it's not what we were calling it, which was ridiculous. There should have been some increase. So therefore, the developers between that time and now have skated by.
Yeah, you could definitely say that we could have charged them more to cover some of those fees. Even with the density impact fee, it wouldn't have affected the water.
Right.
So.
Okay.
So if you look at that, you got the three options, and you can see the interest rates. Now, just so you know, this is kind of what staff put down as a starting point here. Option B is kind of after talking to Karen Keys, and Wes talked directly to our financial advisors as more of, hey, this is more in line to see what rates are really doing. It's a good projection. Now, just so you know, short term is within the first phase period, within the first 5 years essentially. Long term is the next phase. Every phase is 5 years, so it's 5 to 10, or 6 to 10, 11 to 15. So going out all the way to 20 years from now, so to speak. And then option C was basically from our financial advisor and from Karen Keys as the bottom basement. Going lower is not an option because you're just not going to get rates that low. However, all three options are something that is viable and definitely doable. So, but staff is going forward to this committee with option B. It seems to be it's the middle option. It's the Goldilocks for us. You know, it's not too high, not too low.
Do we know of anyone recently who has done a project
Yes.
and has a current rate?
Yeah, for interest rate, yes. So Padre got about 6 months ago got their loan for their pure water project, East County Pure Water, for 4.5%.
Okay.
And that was, and so if they got it 6 months ago, and I talked to Al Lau a little bit, they actually started the process about 18 months ago. They locked in the rate almost a year ago. They just got everything done. So those numbers, even though it's recent, so to speak, from a big project standpoint, going out for some type of muni bond, they're still a year old.
So option C is, it's within the realm of possibility, but we feel it's a little too optimistic.
Yep.
And aren't the feds upping 0.25%?
They are, but I mean, home loans are down a little bit now too.
They
So
might
you
be-
just
they
there's
might be lowering.
yeah,
it, actually.
there's arguments both ways. That's why staff could say all three options are viable options, and one's maybe a little high, one might be a little low, and the option B we felt was a pretty lukewarm way to come in, so to speak. So if you look at this here, you can see the different components of it. You can see the change in the rate compared to this one. This is 16% increase, 8.8%, 6.4. That's what that means. So that's water, and water's a simple one. So I want to start
Yeah,
with water.
Water's not a no-brainer.
Yeah. Yeah, so water's pretty much a no-brainer. Whoops, my bad. And then here's sewer. So just going along the same theme with sewer, here's our current rate. Now, collections, your sewer collection pipes. Outfall is the land outfall. So it's not the ocean outfall, it's land outfall. And treatment is that treatment component.
And the land outflow is just us to
Also all the way down to Encino. Yes.
Encino.
Yep. Yep. Also up to, there's components of it that's 100% capacity increase, and there's components of it that is an increase of the existing pipe. So it's only portions, and we prorated it accordingly.
And is Vista Carlsbad, they're looking at doing a pipe, two of them together?
No. So Buena, they're building a brand new, outfall down Palomar Airport Road.
That's a construction
That's
you're
what they're
seeing.
doing right
in the
Yeah, that's
meeting.
what they're doing right now, but that's a force main, so it's a pressure, because they have the ability to pump it all, and they have the ability to keep it shallow. So instead of going gravity, because it would have to be much deeper, much more expensive, they decided that they're going to pay the recurring pumping costs, and it made sense financially. I'm sure they did a return on investment. I don't know those numbers.
Do we have the ability to purchase, capacity in those other lines at all versus building our own?
So yeah, we looked
That's
into
the
it. They're not. They don't have capacity in their line. Matter of fact, they still, even with their new outfall, they still have to retain 3.5 million gallons of capacity in our line, because they have 3.5 million gallons of capacity. Now they're going to free up some of it, but they still need to retain it. The old Buena outfall, which is a fairly depreciated asset at this point, Carlsbad is going to purchase it. Really, when I say they're going to purchase it, they're going to take it over and then they have to rehab it, and Carlsbad is going to use it at that point. But Carlsbad, even with that, still has to retain capacity in our line. The problem is there's only one corridor, and you can't build a new pipe in that corridor. Is what's going down.
So when you say these agencies, Carlsbad and Buena, when they are there others that have some piece of our line?
No.
Not just those three.
And now, I'm assuming they pay us for that capacity to have it?
No, it's not like there's a reoccurring pumping cost or anything like that. They own capacity in that line, and so if there's a repair or rehab, or like, for example,
Do they own it? I'm sorry, but do they own it because they help construct it?
I believe
Yes.
so. It's basically the developer constructed it. Everybody contributed in to upsize it beyond the developer's needs,
Mhm.
and they put their proportional share in at that point back in 1982 or whatever it was.
And for that, they get a piece of it?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we're the owner and operators of the pipe. So for example, that failsafe line that broke is all part of that same system. When we went in, it was in the Buena reach, so it's 50% us, 50% Buena. So it cost over $100,000 to fix it. Buena paid the bill for $50,000. We should have received a check for that. So they approved it at least. So and when we do these pipeline assessments on those lines, each agency is on the hook for their prorated share.
Hmm.
So, but if we build a larger line for our needs, they're not on the hook for that.
So James and I are in the middle of discussions with Buena and with Carlsbad to talk about the future. So now that Buena's line is a reality, not just an idea, then we're trying to figure out how do we transfer capacity from those that don't no longer need it to those that still do. But nothing is finalized, so nothing we can roll into this and say, hey, we're saving X amount because we purchased Carlsbad's capacity or Buena's capacity.
And the real shame of it all is, well, and I understand why Buena made this decision. When they decided to do a pump system, it's shallow, so our line's down here, their line's way up here, because it's only a few feet under, 4 or 5 feet under the surface of the road. So they have, if there's no ability for our line to get into their sewer, they're a pressurized line.
Right.
So
How deep is our line?
our line, it varies, depends, but it's below the road quite a bit because it's down in that open space canyon. So it's 15 feet deep, 9 feet. It depends on where you are.
Right.
It really does. I
Right.
mean, it's not 20, 25, 30 feet deep, except for underneath Albertsons, it's 50 plus feet deep.
Is it really?
Yeah. There's a tunnel right goes right underneath Albertsons that
Wow.
pops out into Laurels,
Yeah.
basically. So with that, we have treatment costs. And,
I'm sorry,
oh,
just to go back to one other thing, because you said we don't have an agreement there, so we don't know, so we can't use this, but even if we had an agreement, we'd have to pay them for it, so we still have to get money for
Yeah,
it.
details to be determined.
Yep.
Yeah,
But-
sometimes it's possible that Buena may just want to get out of any responsibility, so they may just give us the line and say, we just don't want to have any ongoing responsibility. Because right now, per the agreement, they do. Like James said, if the line failed and we had to go repair it, we would look at the agreement and say, you owe us 50% of that
Right.
repair, or Carlsbad, you owe us X% if it's in the proper reach. So Buena wants to get out from underneath that
Well, if they're not
obligation.
using it, they shouldn't
Right.
have the obligation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Indications are they're not gonna charge us much money, if at all, for turning it over to us, but
Yeah.
then we get a line that's, needs work.
and we're on the hook for a larger percentage of that work.
Right.
So either way, so you pay now, you pay later,
Yeah.
right? So with that, you got treatment, and then we have EWA capital. Then we went over this. This is the portion of EWA that is pure expansion, mainly the heat dryer and the second flare. Actually, not mainly. It's only the heat dryer and second flare, and it's only our portion, our prorated portion of those projects. Then you have existing debt service. That's Encina Phase 5 and Metal Arc expansion. And correct me if I'm. There's a little bit of Interceptor and stuff in it too, but and Rock Springs, and one other sewer, Luna Vista sewer. But primarily, it's those two projects.
Out of curiosity, could you break down what that debt service is? I'm interested to know what Metal Arc debt service is.
Sure. I don't know if you have those
I'm
numbers.
not sure he means Wes will do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. That's why I don't know if you have those numbers.
Sounds good.
That's why I said sure, and then look right at you.
It always goes downhill.
Yep. Oh, no, not really. This is going parallel this time.
Yeah.
So, and then we got the shortfall, which we talked about the shortfall there, which is roughly $6 million, I believe. And then those numbers haven't changed. So you can see everything in here with the interest rate changing, slides on the interest. We kept the existing debt service the same, but it's all worked into the model. And then you can see the difference, and this is the big increases here: 87%, 72%, 66%. Whoops. And then I keep on wanting to
Turtle
scroll down. I know.
scroll.
And then you can see the current fee and the new proposed fees, and then here is the dollar difference in the total fee. So you're looking at 56 to 40%.
James, I know you didn't break out the current fee in the different
Yeah.
itemized list there, but where's the big jumps? Like, where's it occurring? Because and that's
So-
just a significant
So
jump.
Glenn asked the same exact question. So we have a few different jumps here, and we kind of showed it in the previous one when we were trying to make an apples to apples comparison. So the big jump is you have a shortfall now, which you didn't have a shortfall before. You have EWA now, which you didn't have an EWA project before because they were just doing replacement projects, no expansion projects.
Okay.
Because all the expansion was already worked into this $4,000. So that's almost, it's $1,700+ there. You have treatment costs now, which you didn't have treatment before, so that's another $2,000. So now you're basically at $4,000 there, and then the outfall costs. So the old master plan in 2002 had the outfall replacement at 7 to 9 million. Well, do you remember, Rob?
The 2002 master plan had it in like 7 to 9
Yeah, and then the
million.
2008 master plan upped that number to 25
It was
million.
about 25, yeah.
And then now it's $45 million. And the $45 million is based more on reality of what we're seeing in the market, while the 25 and the other million, because you can't just build that outfall. The corridor is so tight and the environmental restrictions are heavy there. And you're building in major roads, which you won't, so then you're back in the environmental corridor. Not only that, we started comparing to what other agencies, there's very few agencies that have a land outfall. Us and Escondido do, for example. And Escondido's estimate was $100 and something million. I actually, after we met this morning, I tried to give Angela at Escondido a call to get the number, and I couldn't get to her, but I talked to someone else in engineering. They said it was like $135 million outfall. And that's one of the reasons they're saying we don't want to build it and we want to do pure water. And pure water has a big price tag too, but it wasn't $135 million. So,
What about some of the, like, this state legislation that we've been hearing about when we go to these conferences about perhaps someday, nothing's going to be allowed to flow to the ocean?
yeah, like the Hertzberg
Yeah.
bill, yeah. So currently that's not approved, and really you're still going to have to convey that to a treatment plant, and then from there, the answer, if you talk to the Senate, is pure water. It's their own pure water where they advance water treatment and bring it back into the water systems. At that point, you have nothing but solids that you can truck off, and you have no liquids or solids within the liquids going into the ocean as a secondary outfall. That's really the answer. But at the end of the day, you still have to convey that to a treatment plant and treat it. And right now, that's our way. And just so you know, because we talked a little bit this morning about the history of the outfall and what options we looked at. If you don't build a new outfall and you still have these ultimate peaks, you'd have to do some work to kind of get rid of some of the bottlenecks in the outfall. So you're talking about $8, $9, $10 million worth of work. But then you'd have to build a storage facility that could hold a certain amount, 20, 30 million gallons of sewer for those peak wet weather events, a back-to-back event. So with that, you're talking, let's say worst case scenario, it's 30 million gallons of sewer at $2.50 a gallon to build on San Marcos Boulevard, right by Lift Station 1. So the city could just say no because that's a huge sewer use facility right there. So and that cost would be higher than the outfall. So
And it's a parallel outfall, right? You're not going to replace the current one, or you're going to...
There's a parallel at the siphon. So the pressurized sections we're going to parallel. So we have and it's a smaller parallel. So basically it's only sized for the increased amount of flow. During dry weather flows, it gives us some operational flexibility, but during peak wet weather flows, both barrels are going at the same time. So it's not a redundant system. There's some redundancy aspects that we get during dry weather. So in other words, in the middle of summer, if we need to do maintenance on it during the day instead of making it night work, there's a possibility we could do that. But during wintertime, it's both flows. But downstream of that, there's no corridor. We have a 10-foot easement and a 40-inch pipe or 36-inch pipe. We're going to be digging up pipe and putting in a larger pipe, is what we're. And that's where the cost of the developers is prorated only for the size difference in pipe.
The Hertzberg bill has so many legs taken off of it as you go through the system. Number one, if Encina could and build the facilities to process to bring it back to drinking water, we have nowhere to sell it.
Yep.
The county water authority has to buy it. And we don't have any deal there to do that whatsoever. I mean, there's awful pitfalls that say Hertzberg can't happen. It can maybe 50 years, but it can't happen when they're talking about it.
How come we didn't have treatment built into our cost here before now?
So the previous master plan, and Rob, you could correct me or add to it if I'm wrong, but I'll give a brief. The previous master plan took our treatment out to basically the planning horizon, which is 20 years. Standard gives you 5-year increments and you do 4 phases. And that's kind of how it's traditionally been done. And what happened, and this kind of ties into that density impact fee, is the land use, which was the old general plan before the new one was adopted in 2014 or whenever it was, didn't allow for all these different land uses. Whether it's the university district or villages, whatever you want to call it, or the creek district, there was SBAs that took care of it. So when those increase in densities happened, we realized that based on the 2008 master plan, we peaked our sewer treatment capacity right around 2030 at the time. It was 2030. This one goes to 2035. And basically, we realized that anybody who creates an increased land use, we really don't have treatment for them, and we're taking treatment capacity away from existing landowners or potential landowners or potential developments that are building within the box, so to speak, within whatever the general plan allowed. So this time around, one of the things that we heard from both sides of the aisle, so to speak, was, hey, you guys got to take into consideration that disadvantaged housing could get density bonuses, that there could be developments out there that, although aren't approved, will get approved, and you need to figure out a way to handle this. So when we went through the 2011 study, we did a whole exercise on, hey, if we charge somebody for, like, for example, there was only a density impact fee on treatment, because the current fee doesn't have treatment, but it had or has collections and outfall on it already. So we did a whole separate thing within that Nexus study, which the board has seen a copy of, and we'll give you a final draft of. It's the 2011 Nexus study that showed that when you calculate what the additional density does, so in other words, a water storage is a real easy concept. If you build a tank that's 5 million gallon tank, and you need a 5 million gallon tank, and all of a sudden 1,000 more homes come in that area, and they pay their prorated portion on the normal cap fee, not a special fee, that $2,000 for $2,400 for storage, that's equivalent. And now you need instead of a 5, you need a 6 million gallon tank. It pays for that 1 million gallon extra. So they're then paying their normal cap fee, even with the density bonuses or change in SBA. You collect the appropriate amount, and when we calculated 4 different ways, it came within dollars. $10, $5. It came within dollars. So when we did with the density bonuses, at first we looked at everything. We looked at, does our water cover it? Does our water distribution cover it? Does our water storage cover it? Does our water pumping cover it? Does our collections cover it? Does our outflow cover it? The answer was yes, yes, yes. So, because the developers were legitimately arguing is, hey, I'm going, Newland Sierra is perfect. I'm bringing in 2,000 plus extra EDUs, so you're collecting that. You never thought you were going to collect that. And we said, well, you're right. Let's look at it. Well, we have to build more distribution for you. We have to build more storage for you. We have to build more pumping for you. Check, check, check. We have to build more collection for you. Check. We have to build a bigger outfall for you. Check. The numbers all check out. But we don't have treatment. And that's the only reason the density impact fee even existed, because it's the only thing we couldn't check from a mathematical standpoint, following just the logic straight down the line. And the reason we didn't have treatment is because these type of bonuses, to this extent, weren't occurring, at least, or we weren't aware of it. Whether the district previously had its head in the sand or just it was new, I can't really comment on that. But it's basically it was a big event, and with our master plan we didn't do it, because the 2002 master plan, the 87 master plan, they all just went to the planning horizon, which is 20-year planning horizons. Because the reason is, Sanday gives you 20 years. To get to ultimate, the cities and the counties give you that. You look at what they say could be ultimate, and you kind of calculate it based on what they say. So you have very good nexuses for 5-year increments up to 20 years. After that, from 20 years to 100 years, 150 years, it may happen, it may never happen. But as you collect, at least you know you have the revenue to build. So in other words, if we don't build, we only have to build half the treatment, because it never develops. That chain property never develops like it's supposed to. The other properties never develops like it's supposed to. We would have collected enough to build just the appropriate amount of treatment. So if from 20 years to the year 200, if only 50 between there and there, if we're supposed to receive, 15,000 more EDUs and only 7,000 come in, we will collect the right amount, because you're checking off the boxes each one comes along.
So what the previous master plan actually found here was by 2030, which was the horizon for that master plan, just coincidentally, it nearly matched how at 2030 what our capacity was in the system versus what the projected flow or demand was in the system here. It was within like 100,000 gallons. So we basically assumed we've reached our capacity at 2030 based on all the approved land uses at the time within our service area. Anything that goes beyond that, above it there, like a nuance here or something here that wasn't approved there, was considered above and beyond that. So that's why we had no need for a sewer at the time there, but now with the new master plan, we're looking at an ultimate horizon,
Yeah.
which incorporates a lot more further along potential growth.
And this was also kind of one of the comments we got at the master plan from the development community is, hey, you gotta take this into consideration. That even if we're coming sooner or later, it might take us a long time. And, as a water sewer agency, we can't put our head in the sand, we gotta take that into consideration. So that's the other reason we added it.
Let me ask a couple of things. So, you have 100 acres and it's ag, and you're gonna put in housing instead. It doesn't really affect us on water.
No, water probably goes down.
Right, water goes down, but the sewer goes up because there wasn't gonna be a sewer there.
Mhm.
So that's really what you're saying.
Yep.
But the density impact fee at the time was on everything that was built.
No, it was only on the delta. So
Only on the projects that exceeded the
Yep.
master plan
So-
density.
what we do is we do a study. We say this is what the master plan density says. This is what you're doing, and here's the delta. And we only charge the density impact fee on the. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's a moot point. It's not. It's no longer valid, and it's no longer needed now that there's treatment in. I mean, that's really the point. There's treatment in this cap fee, so therefore something like a density impact fee is really a moot point. It's no longer needed.
And I understand,
Yeah.
at the time it was explained, it was affecting everyone that came in. With 100 acres, they were building the housing on it, there was density impact, I thought, both water and sewer, both.
No, it was only.
Because they were fighting us on the water part as well, saying, hey, well, our apartments don't use as much water as the house does.
Yeah, they're fighting us on everything, but the density impact fee was only on sewer, only for sewer treatment, and only on the delta. So the argument that Mike McSweeney was saying is, this is not a carte blanche postage stamp fee. You are singling out certain developers and only hurting certain developers. And our argument at the time was, we're charging the appropriate developers for the appropriate fee, and we're not hurting all developers because only certain developers are densifying. But either way, the whole reason for it was we did not have a sewer treatment component in our existing fee.
So, on the 7th, if the board approves staff's recommendation here, when do you anticipate breaking ground on this outfall?
Well, we have budgets this fiscal year to start a planning study and start design next fiscal year on the outfall. I can tell you I'm running a little behind on some of my jobs right now, but basically next fiscal year we'll probably come to the board with a consultant contract with board to do something on the outfall. We're also hoping that more talks with Buena and Carlsbad could clarify, because we don't want to move forward on a design and find out they need something else, because it's a tri-agency type project. So,
And this isn't gonna be one project of the outfall, it's gonna be in pieces.
yeah, we separated it out. There's outfall projects in phase 1, phase 2. Every phase is 5 years. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and phase 5. So we separated them out. Plus, the district financially can't afford a $45 million project all at once. So.
And you can't kick the can down any further because then the fees will be, you can't build.
Yeah, we already this is a big winter, and we already had to creatively keep the outfall from spilling right at the Laurels actually this winter. By pumping and moving. I mean, we have that ability to do so. But
And it actually did spill once.
yeah, and it actually did. Even with that, it actually did spill just a little bit.
Yeah.
So the need is there. So we already peak higher than our siphon could have. We have basically 2 bottlenecks that we need to take care of first. So.
Well, our last 2 water projects, once they've gotten into them, they found it needed more extensive work than what was planned, because the corrosive material that we use to save us is not as good as the old non-corrosive material used to be. So it's another thing on water we have to look at. You can expect that to continue happening on all of our tanks.
One of the things that we have is our outfall condition assessment. It's never been assessed since it got put in 1980. So
You haven't had a guy do that? I thought you'd have a guy to do that a long time ago.
So, yeah, I don't want to crawl on that cut. So we're gonna be videoing it, and there's a section of it that's ductile iron. It's not. It's
Oh.
yeah. There's lots big sections that are ductile iron.
So don't run the camera too fast because it'll break it.
So it should be tough. Underneath the sewer line should be tough. It's the roof that I'm worried about. So, so with that, you can see we're still talking about, even with option C, a significant increase of 40% or $7,000. And under option B, it's $7,800. So it's about $750 difference in the two options. So Mike updated the numbers, and you can kind of see on the water side, we basically essentially stay in the same position that we were at before. There's obviously, you can see a gap, and we picked some more local agencies here. You also, just as a reminder, you got to remember cities have other public facility fees and other tax revenue fees, and that kind of offset some of their fees. Then with sewer, though, you can see there's a significant jump in sewer, and we become very expensive in sewer. Looking at it again, that outfall and treatment are the two main components. Talking with Escondido today, their pure water hasn't been factored into their cap fees. They're
Why
not
don't we
that far.
have Buena Creek and why don't we have Vista's numbers up there?
City
Because
of,
they're the two that are most comparable to us.
well, they're Vista, the water irrigation,
Yeah,
and
no.
City of Vista. We could probably put it on there. I don't know. Do you remember what it is? But no,
Not the
you
city
probably
of, I
No.
wanted to see the,
Oh, but it's still City of Vista.
Buena Creek
Yeah.
is, Buena Creek is.
But it's
Buena
city,
Sanitation,
yeah, but it's
yeah.
still City of Vista, so they still are offset by the city. And Buena's actually pretty well off from a money standpoint.
But that's close to us, I'd like to see that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely we could add it. And then as a combine, you kind of see where we sit, and then obviously we'll go ahead and add the city in there. It's really going to be City of Vista, so we'll have to combine. And maybe that's why we did it. We'll have to combine Vista Irrigation's water fee with City of there's two, City of Vista and Buena. I don't know if they have different fees or not, and then put it in. So we'll pick the higher of the two.
Well, they just increased their fees.
Yeah, we'll pick the higher of the
So
two.
who does Olivia Haynes waste?
Eliminate.
Vallejo.
Leucadia does majority of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it goes to San Leo. Some of it goes to San Leo, and then they have a small Forest Ranch Committee built a recycled water plant that's all encapsulated with the 3,500
We toured
homes,
that.
and that's about it. So that's their only. They have
So
3,000
their
connections.
so their combines are around 16,000, roughly, give or take.
Well, it's segmented, right? Because I mean, they have several different areas that are served by different. City of San Diego serves some of their sewer. They serve 3,000 homes or 3,500 homes at Forest Ranch. So it depends on where you are in your system.
A piece of it.
A piece of it would be that much. So yeah, there's their water.
Which
And what's not shown here, they also have a new water fee. I forget what they call it. It used to be $500 or $800 when they first invented it. It was the first one of its kind. It helps offset the recycle. It's like new water source
Yeah.
fee. It's
I
the first
have a
one of its
question.
kind.
I also don't see Encinitas up there. And I'm looking at partners that we have in
Yeah.
Ewa who are experiencing the same fees with the expansion of Ewa as we are.
But you also got, absolutely. We can put some of that stuff on there, but it's also a city, and they also have, they don't have a incremental method. A lot of them have a combined or hybrid method. So growth does not pay for growth.
Well, we can estimate.
So, well, it's hard. We don't have a model. So, but so with all this stuff, right? You have a combined method here. I don't know what method's there. You have a combined method here. We have an incremental method. I don't know about Oceanside. Ramona has an incremental method. Last time I
Yeah,
checked.
I'm not worried about water, I'm worried about.
Well, no, I'm just saying as an agency.
Yeah.
As an agency. So
So you look at Carlsbad. I mean, I know that they're a city. I get that.
Yeah.
And so just north of Palomar Port Road on El Camino Real,
Mhm.
they're building houses as far as the eyes can see.
Yep.
Is that Carlsbad? Is that serviced by their water and wastewater?
Yes.
And so, I mean, you're looking at their combined fees less than our water fee.
Yeah, and they're again a city agency, and they're actually fairly built out. So they have very little new
Well, we're
infrastructure.
built out.
Well, no, we got almost 40% of our sewer service area is not served by
Yeah,
us.
we probably have one of the biggest growth potentials in our sewer
Yeah.
service area of all the agents.
I
Yeah,
mean,
but the area is not gonna.
Oh
have
yeah,
sewer.
sure.
You're
So
talking
so
about
we're-
northern Twin Oaks and
Yeah.
Lenape sewer.
well, no, if Newland Sewer ever comes, they'll be on sewer, right? I mean, just for example, Director Martin and I were at the basically the general plan, the GPAC, and their housing element was what 4,000 units the previous 8 years, and they're
Right.
looking at another 3,200. So that's 7,000 units over a 15-year period.
And they're looking to increase density.
Yeah, and they're looking to increase density. So that's 7,000 units. And when I looked at that original 4,000 number and I came back and compared it to what we see, so that's 4,000 plus units that they have entitled and approved. Not all entitled, but approved. Of that, not all have come in, but they still in. So if they
Where's
build
this at again?
City of San Marcos.
GPAC.
Yeah. So the city of San Marcos, which is a significant amount of our growth, basically has in their system in the last 8 years, maybe they built 2,000 units in the last 8 years, but there's another 2,000 that they still get credit for to approve, and they're asking for another 3,200.
Mhm.
So we have another 6,000 units on the books just in the city of San Marcos. It may not get built, but it's approved to be built over the next X amount of years. I mean, decade plus, but it's still there. If you look at that, just them alone is, what is that in percent? How many units do we have? 22,000 connections now, and they're going to add another, 6,000 to 7,000 connections. So it's a significant percentage right there. So on our water side, it comes out, we're at 35% of growth potential left. Not that it's all going to come, but that's what the planning and the land use agencies say. We make no, we're not a land use agency, so we don't project out, or we don't project out anything different than they give us. So,
Do we have numbers, substantial numbers now? Not, I guess, or I think, numbers on apartments. What they're using in water, what they're using in waste, actual numbers.
water for sure, waste is an estimation from the water use. Actually, I take that back. Waste water numbers are pretty good because all new apartment complexes have separate irrigation meters. So everything that goes inside the building is assumed coming outside the building.
Okay.
So,
So do we have those numbers?
Yeah.
If so,
it's in the master plan.
and we need to have them at the meeting.
Yeah, so the duty factors from the master plan, it's just the water and sewer duty factors. Mike always brags about 500,000 lines of data, right? So in the master plan, Rob and his staff go through that same 500,000 lines of data, which is 1 year's worth of data, correct? But we go through 5 years of it. So 25 million? So, no, 2.5 million. Yeah, 2.5, I know, I'm tired.
Yeah.
2.5 million. So we go through 2.5 million lines of actual meter records to put
Right.
those duty factors together.
But we don't have that many meter records on the type of facilities I'm talking about.
We do. It's more than you'd think. The super high density in the 08 master plan, we only had a handful, and the numbers were very. But then this 2018 master plan, we had more, and we were able to hone in the numbers. And guess what? We guesstimated based on what we thought from the very few records in the 2008 master plan. The numbers actually went up based on actual usage.
Director Martin, are you concerned that we don't have sub-meters for apartments, for example? I'm
No.
not sure.
No,
what
I just
data
wanna
you
know,
us to have.
I know one of the questions that came up 7 years ago coming in today is, hey, you're looking at old numbers, our new units are not
Okay.
using as much water, our new units are not flushing as much, and our new units being, the stuff down in, across from the university,
So-
in,
so-
those properties.
Those are the new units we're talking about. The quad, the quorum.
The quad,
Yeah, the-
specific numbers on the
Yeah.
quad, what they use for water, what they use for
Yeah.
sewer.
Okay, you want specific numbers on those? too.
Specific numbers.
So just so you know, we looked at those specifically for the master plan, and what we saw was the numbers went down lower than we estimated initially, but they weren't fully occupied. After they're fully occupied, it stabilized, and then started cranking back, and they went higher.
That's what we need to see.
So, but that's what we built their master plan duty factors on. That was the methodology. Those duty factors, and we could pull some examples.
Yep.
But those duty factors are how we arrived at the duty factors, and we actually found them using higher water and the higher density than we even estimated.
I'd love to see maybe a chart on, Block
One of
C.
those, yeah.
Block C.
Block C's too new. It's not even fully occupied.
Okay.
For our data.
Okay.
So we'd have to go to maybe the quad or the quorum, one of those.
Okay,
But
the
it's
quad.
still in that area.
The quad, 'cause I know those are gonna be specific questions that are gonna be
Yep.
asked. If
Yeah.
we had answers, it would be sweet.
Yeah, we'll pull a chart together. Rob went through this exercise a while ago. We can pull that chart together. It's a couple years old. Maybe we'll pull some the last 2 years of data, add to it or something.
Thank you.
So that's pretty much it as far as, is there another slide or is that,
No.
yeah, that's pretty much it as far as the actual cap fees. So staff is intending on bringing this forward and making the board clear that we brought it to committee for recommendation, also making it clear that all three options are viable options. So can you go back for me once?
But the staff have a preferred option.
We just kind of picked the middle option, just because it is the middle option.
Now, is
It's-
there gonna be a fourth or fifth option presented at the
There'd
meeting?
be no other option.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I just wanna make sure we clarify
Yeah,
that, because that
yeah.
happens
And
sometimes.
today, we'd like to get a
Three
feel.
point one or
yeah.
something?
Yeah. Well, you could change
The
those
real
numbers.
one that staff wants?
Yeah. You could,
Okay.
We
So-
only do that when you come up with good ideas in the finance committee meetings, and then we bring
okay.
those.
And so that's just it. So if there is something the finance committee meeting wants to see, we'd have to hustle on it because obviously it's due Wednesday. And also, if there's a recommendation from the finance committee, we could adjust staff recommendation to match. Because again, all three options are viable options from a staff standpoint.
One kind of clarifying question too is I know that we've kind of put this whole process off a lot longer than we
Mhm.
probably should have in the past. Assuming that we don't do that again, that we learn from our mistakes, if we were to take option C, when would be the next time that would we have the opportunity to adjust those rates if there was a change in?
So
interest
Rob
rates?
and I just got off the phone with Lutfi from Best and Krieger. He's the cap fee specialist, and he's helping put in the polishing touches on the ordinance. And he just clarified. So I know a lot more about it now than I did an hour ago. So basically, to just do a regular cost index in ENR or your cost of living index, so to speak, it's automatic. It's not a big deal. That's the first nugget that and we kind of already knew that. To make any changes on interest rates or costs, like if a project comes in that you thought was going to be $45 million like the Alpha, but it came in at 25 and you want to adjust the cost, you could do it automatically. You don't have to go out for another process if you lower fees. But if the project is a $45 million project and it comes in at $60 million, you have to go through a process. Now, you don't need a full nexus study because you're not changing methodology. So changing interest rates and changing the cost of the project, as long as you follow the methodology, can be done in-house by staff, plugging into the in-house model, but it has to go through a proper notification, proper meeting with the BIA, public, so this way they have an opportunity to review it, and it takes board action to do. It won't be an automatic indicator. So if it goes up, because interest rates go up, it's a board action. So staff will need to monitor it and bring it to the board. And if we do that, we need to obviously invite the BIA and other stakeholders, developers, and explain to them what we're doing and go through a process. The other thing he told me, which I did not know, was it doesn't require a 60-day process. You could do it automatically, and many districts do. Cap fees specific for developer fees can be done automatically. However, we've always done it with a 60-day process. So he said it'd be good practice to keep at least a minimum 60-day process because that's the expectation this time. But in the future, as long as the conversation is up front with the stakeholders that it's going to be automatic or at the board's discretion, then it can be done that way.
So Director Snella, the important thing that James is alluding to is we wouldn't have to go and do a new master plan.
Yep.
So we can do those annually or every other year
So if we took a more
adjustments.
cautious approach
Yep.
now, and if something were to change, or we found out that interest rates were going higher when we needed to get the money, then within 6 months we could correct it.
Yeah,
Easily,
absolutely.
right?
You could do it more. You could do it several times a year if you just want to do it. If it's going up, it just takes that notification, and you don't need that 60 days. So you could technically do it as often as you want, although that'd be unprecedented. But yeah, you can. If we get into a crazy inflationary period, you can.
You may want to set like an annual review. We'll
Yeah.
look at it every year and make
Yeah.
adjustments
But-
based on reality.
But the
Good
good
finance
news is,
committee,
and that's
right.
one of the reasons that I say that staff is actually comfortable with all three options because that's newer information for us. Because we've never done it that way before, but now I'm getting educated on this too. And then the other thing is, whatever we set, if something goes down, as long as you don't change methodology, you don't have to go out through a process. You can just go and automatically make it down. It doesn't need board approval. We probably still go through a committee process.
For example, if our discussion with Carlsbad and Buena resulted in something that would significantly reduce our outfall costs, we could reflect those
Yep,
whenever
absolutely.
we needed to and lower them.
And that doesn't require a new update. You know, basically we put together an updated memo, and then update the model, and we'd be done.
So if we go with the 4.5 to 6%, and it suddenly hits 7.25, we can change it immediately.
You can change it.
So we don't
anyway.
get burned.
It might
Yep.
take us a month or two to put everything together, but
Right.
it wouldn't
That's
be
about it.
going
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you don't need a 60-day period.
Okay.
So that
You
was
do it as quick as
yeah.
possible.
So that made the staff level was much more comfortable with that. So you're not looking at 2 months to do it and another 2 months to, and by the time you're done with that, it went up again, you know, or it's no longer valid.
Right.
So you could pretty much act within, you know, as Director Nacella said, probably a month to 2 months with schedulings and everything else.
So I have to ask, because just being fiscally conservative, I never like to see our rates be the highest in
Yeah,
the
I don't
region, and
either.
I don't like to see our fees be the highest in the region, right? Anything that costs people money, I want to be able to manage that as fiscally responsibly as we can. But we focused today on interest rates, because I believe it's because it's where we have some flexibility.
Mhm.
In the other areas that you have here, even though you didn't present any options to us today, is there any flexibility whatsoever?
Yeah, so that's exactly what the general manager is alluding to. So the outfall cost. So all these things, this is locked. Okay, we're talking mainly sewer now, right? So I'll concentrate on that. So this is locked. This shortfall is locked. I mean, that's just what it is. This EWA cap fee is locked unless all of a sudden EWA gets rid of the project. The treatment itself is kind of a double-edged sword. The development committee wants the treatment. They want the treatment cost in there because they don't want to be saddled with potentially no treatment option in the future because it's going to bite them. But you know, and we have treatment in our master plan and it's appropriate. The outfalls where we have potential flexibility in the future, but we're not going to vet that out for quite a bit. You know, it's a 3-agency agreement, and the general manager and I are working diligently on it, and we're getting some almost memorandum understandings between the different agencies on how to proceed. So if there's a significant savings, then we can come back and do it. But the big thing is right now, with all the adopted documents, we don't have a nexus to point at that says this is actually going to be a $30 million job, not a $45 million job. Therefore, we're going to reduce the fee. But the good news is, if it does become a reality and we have, you know, board-approved agreements that truly reflect that savings, we could change the fee almost instantaneously with a board approval without going through a full process. So, you know, there is some
You
flexibility
could
there.
change the fee for future developments, but one of the things I keep hearing is that there's no mechanism to, let's just say the costs do come in under, highly unlikely, but let's just, you know, play it out.
I'm hopeful.
There's no mechanism to return the fees that people who are paying this, whatever the fee ends up being.
Right.
You know, some builders might pay a higher fee than future builders.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
And
there's
there's
some
no
buil-
mechanism in place to return, to refund them the
You're
money.
right, just like there's no mechanism to get more money out of a developer we
Right.
already paid if the costs went up.
Yep.
And that, I think that's the double-edged sword there, is if you don't collect it now, and you reduce those fees,
We can never go back again.
the next developer coming in is gonna pay twofold or threefold.
Yeah.
And eventually you'll kill development.
Yeah, and right now we have a significant amount of EDUs coming in just based on that GPAC meeting and what we have in the master plan. It all kind of lines up. The timing is a little off, but the total units line up. So there's an opportunity to really spread those fees out amongst a lot of developers instead of making a $30,000 fee.
Where are these 6,000 units gonna go? Is it mostly Creek District? I've
They're
been-
downsizing the Creek District actually, or sorry, they're downsizing the total footprint of the Creek District, but adding more housing units,
Yeah, they just,
reducing commercial.
he just sold a ton of land over in the new city area.
Yeah.
They just sold it to a large developer that's trying to get us to push the fees back, so that he doesn't have to pay them.
So Discovery
But he already bought
Villages,
the land.
Discovery Villages
Yes, sir.
is going to be more EDUs than before, I believe, but still fits in with the University District specific plan. although they may be updating that too.
They're updating
Yeah.
that, they're
So-
increasing,
Yeah, so basically what they're doing is they're reducing commercial footprint and adding residential footprint.
Right.
So it's the same footprint or a little less footprint overall from a total density, not density as in people, but density as in buildings, but more housing units, less commercial units. So the city can't support 1 million square feet of retail and commercial, so they're reducing that to 500, and then the other 500, they're cutting that down a little bit to maybe 300,000 square feet and making those residential. It's kind of, it's, you know, in a very generic way, that's what's happening.
they're looking at changing the mixed use formula, because the mixed use formula doesn't work.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
That makes sense.
they have
More-
plenty of empty space in town to show it
Yeah,
doesn't work.
more traditional condos and separate commercial buildings instead of, you know, condos on top of commercial buildings.
Right.
So at least, I mean, it's still yet to be determined that seems to be the direction. So,
So I'm more comfortable with an option C recommendation as long as we have some kind of more frequent check-in process.
Why don't we make it part of an annual review for this agenda?
yeah,
Just have
absolutely.
the committee as a
At least
place.
initially, and
Well-
then if there's some changes, then we bring it to the full
You know,
board, but if
the-
everything's just,
The good idea would be we adopt the budget and there's a huge budget process. And actually, Wes and I need to discuss it because there's a budget process and auditing process. So if there's a window, we could do a cap fee process and relook at the cap fees. You know, maybe one or two.
Right after the budget adjustment. Budget
Yeah,
review.
between budget and audit, and then because anything we do, then staff will have direction to make those changes and then make it effective before January 1st. So this way, if we only change cap fees in January 1st, whether it's just standard E&R or an increase or reduction.
So,
My
Go
good
ahead.
feeling is that the BIA understands your numbers. They have to fight it, they have to argue it.
Absolutely.
But I think they understand your numbers. It doesn't matter what numbers you bring forward, they have to put up a
Yeah.
fight for their members. Members pay to have a fight. But I think they understand it. But the water use, I've always had concerns about,
Yeah.
which is not the big concern here, but it is a concern as to what are we actually using for water in the new apartments, because they're looking at increasing, double fulling the increasing.
So
You see that new building at the university? 7 stories.
7 stories tall,
In
elevators.
San
and
Marcos.
everything. So the good news is this: during the master plan process, they brought that concern up to us, and we had our consultant look at. First off, the water use difference in the sewer generation. The sewer generation hasn't changed relative to the water use. So people are still flush. I understand they have low flow toilets, but people are still flushing. People are still taking showers. What we find is on the water use, here's our average, and our average per person used to be here, and now our average per person is here. But here's our peak, and our peak didn't move. So the difference used to be this, and now the difference in this, and same with the sewer. So, and when we size infrastructure, and we talked a lot about average use, and that works for sewer treatment, because sewer treatment is based on average use. But when we size our pumps and our tanks and our pipelines, that's based on that peak use. And kind of like when Director Martin first took the board seat, I used the example of it's a level of surface at a street. You know, it's okay that San Marcos Boulevard is a D rating because during rush hour it's, you know, bumper to bumper, it's slow, but you can't do that with water and sewer pipes because then every day you would spill a sewer. Every day people would get up in the morning, take their shower, and no water would come out. So we have to have a level of service of A on our water and sewer infrastructure. So a lot of people talk about averages, but they forget that we're not building for the average, we're building for that peak, and unfortunately that's just our industry, we have to build for that peak, you know. And then, but on sewer treatment, the average does make a difference. So that's one of the reasons that kind of the liquids number went down when we calculated, you know, when we compared it to that density impact fee calculation. The liquids number went down, but the solids number didn't change because the solids number is still, the same stuff's still coming out of you, so to speak. So, you know, just a little less water going down with it.
So as we finalize the staff report, is the committee okay if we say the staff and committee recommend option C and an annual review process for making adjustments?
I am, I mean, if those are the 3 options, I like to keep, like I said,
Option
raising
C.
fees
Okay.
as low as possible.
Option C, annual
Yep,
review.
absolutely. All right. So, and staff is comfortable with that, as I mentioned in the beginning, where all 3 options are viable options, especially with the fact that now that we know that it's not a 60-day process, and, you know, with all the new information.
But please do have Vista and Buena Vista on there.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll update that.
Encinitas and Vista / Buena. So, All
So
right.
before we move into the next item.
I do have one
sorry.
public speaker on this item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Hunsker?
Okay. One of the things about university villages in the North City is this is dorms. And they have anywhere from 3 to 4 bedrooms per dorm. And it's double occupancy. So this is going to be much higher than your average apartment, which averages, I think, 2.2 residents per apartment. So the bathrooms and the number of bedrooms, actually the number of bedrooms is probably a better metric than just taking the whole city and using old 1 or 2 bedroom apartments as being the norm. And they are talking now about communal living and these other things that really drive it up. There's also the interest in how they handle laundry, because the laundromat uses a tremendous amount of water. And some of these dorms and such have commercial operations or offshore, but the amount of water per student can actually go up depending on how the laundry and things go. But the number of bedrooms in a dorm situation and in the higher density regime, that's one of the things that's going to be a big issue. Now, EWA, we've read through some of their projections and their master plan and whatever, and it's really a little bit of a guesstimate game. Like what you're doing with interest rates, they're doing all up and down the map in different scenarios. But one of the things that comes up distinctly is the cost of power will be a huge driver on what's going on. Hopefully we don't use reverse osmosis for some of the stuff in EWA. I think a vapor distillation system that makes a lot more sense. But even that, no matter what you do, if you're going to wring water and separate out the fluids and the solids and such and get pure water out of it, it is huge, huge water energy consumption. And any assumptions you make going forward, if they don't include something at least 5% increase in power, I think is unrealistic. As far as the annual review, I would say that's a pretty good thing to do. On cap fees, I had a curious, looking into one development, saw something curious, and that was with the Wordward Senior Active Housing cross unit. They had 55 apartments, I believe it is, and they had so many EDUs and, for the meter, which didn't look like it matched up with the EDUs it's supposed to be charged for and the meter size. But I also saw a curious thing where they were buying capacity at the lease fees, and essentially paying half of the capacity fees by purchasing at the lease rate. So how do we handle per gallon excesses? What do we charge? And is it supposed to be a true lease, or is it actually a purchase of capacity? And that's a serious issue.
I don't even know where that building's located at, so.
Yeah, I can answer this question. So,
Sure.
so the density is basically your remember master plan. Everything is a projection planning document. When a developer actually comes in, they actually give us fixture counts, units, and everything, and per uniform plumbing code, and we add it up. So when you look at the land use, that is just an amalgamation of averages throughout the district based on land use, and we come up with a factor that we plan for. when they come in to pay for their meters, it's based on what they actually are building. So in other words, if you have a property like a chain property that can have 30 units and you only build 2, you're only going to pay for 2 units. They're not going to charge you for 30 because the land use says 30. And so with the university district properties, with the student housing, which the argument from the developer was opposite, these student housings will use even less. Our argument was the same as Mr. Hunsaker's. It's going to use more. We actually could compare land use types as an average, and we could compare what they actually built. But from a master plan, it's only land use, so it averages out. There's people who use more, there's people who use less, but they get charged for what they actually build. For EWA, the cost of power is really insignificant for the majority of our because we're talking about collections, treatment, so on and so forth. EWA's cost of power and the pure water project is not part of our cap fees. Annual review, I agree. I think that's a good idea. And Woodward Housing, there's no lease capacity in Woodward Housing, but if they buy a meter that's let's say a 1.5 inch meter, and they need a little bit more, but not enough for a 2 inch meter, instead of charging them all the way to a 2 inch meter for capacity that they don't use, we actually just charge them the appropriate prorated portion between 1.5 inch, whatever that EDU is, to what they actually need. So if what's a 1.5 inch meter in EDUs?
So 1.5 inch meter is 4 EDUs.
Okay, so let's say they need 4.5 EDUs. We'll charge them 0.5 EDUs at a straight proration, so no discount for that difference for 0.5, instead of going to an 8 EDU meter and charging them for all that capacity that they don't use. So it actually saves the developers a lot of money, because a lot of agencies make them go to the next view. Oh, you're slightly over, go get the bigger meter. And they
Right.
collect the money and they pocket it.
They save money 2 different ways here. So they're only getting charged half an EDU times $7,756, and also they're not paying the county water authority portion for an upsized meter.
So we're
But they're paying their fair share.
they're
Yes.
paying their fair share, and they're not being overcharged.
The quads dorms, do they have like kitchen and bathroom facilities inside the rooms?
It's on full fixture count, so they may not, but then compared to they don't actually.
They have like a shared,
Yeah,
like
sure,
okay,
yeah,
that's
but-
okay.
but
I was
compared-
like, I'm like, well, man,
yeah.
things have changed since
Well,
I was in
Yeah,
college.
compared.
I'm like, they don't have to share showers?
One bathroom for 2 students.
Yeah, one bathroom for
So
two
if you have a
students, no
4
kitchen.
bedroom, if you have a 4 bedroom, you've got, with 2 in each one,
Yep.
you got 4 bathrooms.
Oh, that mean?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know it was that high. So there's a fixture count involved in that, and so when you look at
Right.
the total fixture counts, but for us, we look at the land use averages. So they fit into a, I don't know, 40 to 50 units per EDUs per acre. So they might have 80 units, but each one of their units don't equal a single family house. So it equates to, let's say, a 50 single family homes per acre equivalent, and we compare it to other 50. So that's how it compares. So
Well, and we should, I mean, now that they've been around for a while, we should have actual data.
yeah, we do.
Right?
We
So
do.
it shouldn't be a mystery anymore.
Yeah, we do, and you know, you can make the argument that students use more. You can make the argument that students use less because they're not. They're
Or we
not
could
there
just
all
look
the
at the
time.
actual information, the
Yeah.
actual data.
Well, that's actually what we did a few years ago, and different examples here. One of them was the quad, what they were using, and we're finding student housing is using more than what we typically see for that size.
Even though they're
That's
not
fine.
there 2 months out of the year?
Yep.
Yeah.
They
But-
It's not
use more?
surprising.
But you know,
on an
it's
annual
surprising.
basis.
when these new developments are all brand spanking new, everything's really tight. As soon as they get used up a little bit, people take the flow restrictors out. There could be leaky toilets, and the students don't care. They're renters; they don't report it necessarily.
no.
So, you know, if you're a lot of homeowners don't take care of that stuff,
Right.
and they live there, and that's their home. They're paying that water bill. The students don't actually pay a water bill.
Correct, yeah.
Now that I've got water runs all the time.
And lastly, if we have to go out for more loans, and get those low rates, will we have to agree again to a 15% overage and cost for our operating and maintenance of budgets?
The loans that are only for the capital costs of building the infrastructure. That includes a soft cost, which is the engineering, design, planning costs. but there's no O&M costs involved.
It's in the covenants, the
There's,
bond covenants.
we don't put any engineering, we don't put any O&M costs in our bonds. You're allowed to under certain ones. I don't know that for a fact, but if that's what you're
It's
saying.
required in your
So, we,
refinancing
but
bonds.
we don't put any O&M costs in our bonds. So our current bonds have no O&M costs in
Are you talking about the debt service?
No, I'm
obligation?
talking about debt service. There's a 15% margin you have to
Every
maintain.
bond, every municipality bond's gonna have that, and that's fine, we're well above that. You're saying that we have to have 115% debt
Oh,
service
oh,
coverage?
debt service coverage, yes.
Yes.
Coverage,
Any new bonds
okay.
will have to have that, and we'll be fine, we're well above
Yeah.
that.
That's a chart.
Yeah, but that
Yeah.
means that money has to be spent back to the ratepayers. Otherwise, if
No,
it goes
no.
into capital fees in any way.
No, all that means is you have to have operating expenses, operating revenues over 115% of your debt service payments. So
Right, and it's been going into the reserves.
any revenue over expenses goes into reserves, always.
Yeah, but that's just a covenant, so you have to
Yeah,
show that
different.
you're making 15% more than you're spending. That's all you,
Right.
that's, it's not a, you have to move this money into one way or another.
But it can be annually, you can refund to the ratepayers at 15%. It doesn't have to just
No.
go into reserves.
That's just required in order to meet your bond debt covenants, otherwise you go into default and there's all kinds of penalties for not covering the ratio for your debt. It's a completely different
It's
issue.
more of a
than your-
limit of how much you borrow than
Yeah.
how much you charge.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with our net income or revenues and expenses, it's a debt service requirement, and it's required by all municipal bonds.
Right, it's a debt service requirement, it's a question of how the money is used.
If we don't have enough revenues, if we're below 115%, then Union Bank or whoever we issued through is gonna penalize us and come after us and possibly put us in default of our debt. But we're well above that, so it's not a concern.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 1.
If we can, before we get into that, Wes shared some information. Director Martin asked a question about the Meadowlark costs, debt service costs. Wes, why don't you just share with this?
So this is the original, not the original, we had the 1998 bonds, they were the original bonds back in 1998, for $26 million, I believe it was, and that was for the first Twin Oaks Reservoir. In 2005, we refunded the 1998, and we actually added more for the second Twin Oaks Reservoir and for Meadowlark. So this is what those funds were used for, so it's about $23 million for the Meadowlark facility.
That's what we borrowed. It was more from the Mellick facility, but that's the portion that we borrowed.
Of our
So
total
of the 67 million, 23 million was for Meadowlark.
So about
Okay,
third.
that's the 98.
Well, it's now the 2015, because it's been sent, it was refunded in 2007, and it was refunded in 2015, it's just,
You may recall when we refunded it, or basically refinanced it, we didn't extend the amortization schedule, right? We kept it the same.
right, the period is usually the same, and I believe on the 98s, we kept those at 25 years, but the 2005 was the new 30-year issuance. So the new money, the 43 million is gonna be 30 years,
Right.
the old money would have stayed at 25. And if Anthony can help me out on this one, don't, these issuances expire after 10 years typically?
Usually there's a call provision that you can't refund it within 10 years.
Okay, so you have to wait at least 10 years.
Thank you.
That's just
Thank you,
additional
Bill. Thank you, thank you, Wes. Now I know you do something with it.
You ready for the item 1?
Yes.
Which is now item 2?
Okay,
Okay.
so I'll try, sorry.
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
So this is just the overhead rate. Every year we have to come forward and get board approval to establish the overhead rate, and that's all this item is. Tentatively scheduled for August 7th. I wanted to run it by the Finance Committee first. We'll try to do this one briefly to catch up some time.
Yeah, we've got 3, so I'll try to keep it quick, because I've only been here for,
You can close that.
Wednesday.
Well, I'm not in a rush, I'd rather get this done.
I got no toolbar down bottom here. There we go.
You don't have any hot dates done or anything?
They had cold ones.
Okay, so I handed out the overhead calculation. I didn't hand out a copy of the budget, but the source for the overhead calculation is the approved budget. And you'll see in the third column, it has a budget page number. So those are gonna tie to your approved budget for the year, but I'll get into that in a minute. So we're back to I didn't recreate this, I probably should get a new one, maybe I'll do it. And we're in a new fiscal year, so.
Next
probably-
year, next
yeah,
year.
you know. We used this one last year. I didn't make any changes to this one. That was just, that's boring. So the agenda for today, we're gonna go over the purpose of the overhead rate, the background, go over the methodology. I'll talk about the current year calculation. I'll compare it to the prior year, and then we'll talk about the next steps. So first, let's talk about the purpose of overhead, and just to recap, also what it does. I think before we say what the purpose is, I think everybody has an understanding at this point because we've presented it several times. It basically allocates a portion of the operating cost to the cost of an asset or a project. So it is actually moving money to where it should be to the actual cost of the asset. And you will see in your budget in G&A there's a transfer from operations to the cost of the projects, and it's budgeted in there as a transfer. So the reason why we do it is because, one, it's required by GAAP. GAAP says the actual cost of an asset is equal to the direct labor and materials plus the supporting costs, and those supporting costs are the overhead, the indirect labor and benefits, or indirect costs plus benefits. And the second reason, probably the most important in our case, is that it eliminates the unfair burden on the ratepayers. By moving the cost from operations to the cost of the assets, you either charge the developer, you charge whoever is actually responsible for it, or you move it to the cost of a project and you amortize it over the life of the asset, which reduces the operating cost for that year. So in 2013, and they came out again actually in 2015, in 2015 was determined there was no change needed to the methodology. But Black & Veatch recommended using a single overhead rate. It's something that's done commonly by most other agencies. We actually at the time had a 3-component overhead rate where we did 75% of payroll, 15% of inventory, and 5% of AP, so in materials we had 5%. It was a complicated calculation, and I'm not sure what the source of that was, because I'm not sure we ever did a cost of service study prior to this. But the single rate is a more common rate, and it's applied to direct labor based on the approved budget. Starts in July 1st of each fiscal year, and it's billed to contractors, developer projects, and miscellaneous billings. So the methodology is basically just the budgeted indirect costs plus the employee benefits over the direct labor costs. So now I'll go into the components of that, and this is it's just a summary of the pages of your approved budget, and you can see, so the total for like safety and regulatory affairs of 246 is the total cost for that department. Black & Veatch identified 4 departments that are indirectly related to the cost of providing water, and that'd be safety and regulatory affairs, buildings and grounds, information technology, and G&A. So we've got the cost of those 4 departments in water, and then the sewer below that. So after that, you'll see the cost of G&A, and there are 2 line items for G&A. One is the 2.986 million here, and then the 961. The reason we have the 961 is because in the budget, we budgeted the transfer out of G&A to the cost of the projects. So to get the total cost, to show you the calculation, we have to add it back to get the total cost of G&A. This is just a repeat of the previous departments, but for wastewater. So, and there's G&A again, but for wastewater with the G&A transfer added back. And the last component is the water and wastewater benefits. So we have to take the benefits, which are indirect costs. They're going to be included in the next calculation. I'll show you how we get the $3.6 million, but it's indirect costs plus benefits to get the total indirect cost in the calculation.
Before you change pages, okay, maybe we get to it.
Yeah. So this capital A, this is going to be our numerator. This is the total indirect cost plus the cost of benefits. That's the numerator of the overhead calculation. Do you have a question on that, Dr. Martin?
Yeah, it looks like between 18 and 19 it went up 100,000, and now it's going up 400,000. Why?
Yes. And I will get to it at the end.
Okay.
The majority of that is going to be related to PERS and the matching. So the PERS went up by about $300,000. That's indirect benefits, and the matching is also a benefit. That's like $100,000 for the year. That's the 400,000.
Good answer. Good answer.
So that's A. So this section shows the direct labor costs of providing water. So here we have the water component of it. These are just the labor costs in those departments for the departments directly related to pumping, water quality, water treatment, tanks and reservoirs, transmission and distribution, so on and so forth. And then we have the same for the sewer departments. So the water plus the sewer equals the $9.4 million you see here at the bottom. Those labor costs, though, include the benefits. So this 9.3 isn't your denominator. We have to take out the benefits and bring them back to here. So that 3.6 needs to be taken out of the direct, put into here. So now I'm going to show you how to calculate that. So this is how we get to there. So this is on page 25 of your budget. So on page 25 of your budget, we've estimated the benefits to be 60. Here's the total 9.4 million, and the benefits as a portion of that are 62%. So you need to reduce it by that. So here's the direct cost less the benefits. So this is your denominator now because it takes out the benefits. So the benefits are the $3.6 million shown below that, and the whole calculation is there. So now you have your 12.5 we showed on the first sheet for the indirect cost plus benefits, and the direct labor cost of the $5.7 million is B, and the resulting number is 217.48%, and that shown here is down from 219.43% last year, and you can also see all the way back to 2016 in this sheet if you want to compare the annual rates.
So over this 5-year period, the methodology hasn't changed at all, it's just budgeted numbers that we're putting in.
Yep.
You always remind me of the Wizard of Oz. You know, don't look behind the curtain, but you come up with the right answer, so
How does
look behind the curtain.
what am I missing, Wes? When all the numbers are higher than they were last year, but then the percentage is less. Is there something that's being divided by that
Yes.
increased?
So in this case, you got an increase in indirect costs and of what, 400,000, but the direct costs are wait, let's go back to here so you can see it. So yeah.
Oh, the direct costs went up too. I like it because it went down so good.
So the direct costs of the denominator, they went up as well.
Any questions?
So this will be on August 7th.
So yeah, next steps, we're gonna be bringing this to the August 7th board meeting, hopefully to be approved by the board.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it. See you next month on, well, not on this topic, but next month.
So our overhead
So
rates are gonna go down?
they are going to go down.
So
Because
as
indirect went up by less than direct, so
Good
therefore
job,
you're gonna
Mr.
go down.
GM, good job.
Well, it depends how you look at it. I mean, when they're high, you get more money back from developers and from other projects, but it's, 219% to 217%, it's virtually the same, so.
Correct, correct.
So the other two items we have for the committee, did you want to?
No, I was just gonna say, does the board have a preference, but we'll make both of them quick. Go ahead, so whichever one you feel.
We'll go to two.
Okay, so what do we have for two then?
First.
That's the first page. Okay, so I don't have any slides on this, this is just informational for discussion only, I know. If
No
anything,
slides?
if anything, I could have Anthony present it, because he's got more
Oh,
information.
Anthony, yeah, I'd like to see him present it.
You want to give the update, Anthony?
No.
Sure.
Do I have a choice?
So at the end of June, we did make an extra payment of $834,000, an additional discretionary payment. End of last week, we made a 1.132 required payment for 1920, and then once we get our actuarial evaluation sometime in August, we're expecting mid-August probably, then we'll plan the extra 8.1 million additional discretionary payment at that point.
You may recall that the first number, Anthony said the 800,000, the board took that action a while ago. That
Right.
was because of the Diamond Environmental and that.
Right.
So the board said put that towards PERS.
Right.
So that's now incorporated in the reserve balances, so that's in there, and that came directly out of reserves. The lump sum is an operational cost, it's a required payment that we make.
Right.
But we paid it up front so that we saved $40,000. Because you have the option of paying it by month or paying the full $1.1 million up front to save $40,000. We think that's worth it, so we always.
Haven't
make
we
that-
always paid up front?
We have, yes.
It's
We've
been
always
our
had that savings.
Okay.
But as he was mentioning, we're gonna look at the actual evaluation hopefully in August. At that point, we can work with the actuary to decide what basis we wanna apply it to and go into that whole, and then we can apply the $8.1 million. It's better to wait for a new evaluation because there may be a new basis created this year, at which time it may be more expensive than the previous basis. So I think if we get that new one, it'll give us the option of paying against that one as well.
So in August or shortly thereafter, when we get that evaluation or the new actuarial report, will come back to the finance committee and share that information.
They have to make it more complicated.
Yes.
It's not just paying down alone,
No, it's definitely not.
different buckets.
So the last item then, unless you have questions on the first payments?
No question.
Last item, we have the cost of service study. So we sent out, I believe, 17 or so RFPs. We got 2 responses for RFPs. I believe we've talked about that before. We had 4 evaluations, so me and 3 other staff actually evaluated the proposals, and it was unanimous. We selected, can I do the drum roll and announce who we
Sure.
selected? So, so Raftelis' proposal was selected as the most qualified. Raftelis was selected as the most qualified consultant for the cost of service study. So we brought them in to discuss contracts and prices and stuff, and actually we got a proposal from them for $63,000 to perform a water cost of service study. So the next thing we'll be doing hopefully is looking this over and sending it to the board on August 7th with the contract for approval.
Yeah, it exceeds my signature authority, so it needs board approval.
You comfortable with the amount?
Yes.
It's a good firm. If you go to Aqua and other conferences, you've probably seen Sanjay, I think his name's Sanjay, presents all the time, and he's with Raftelis, so he's a big player in the
Do you want
custom
this
service.
committee to weigh in on it?
Yeah, I guess if you want to say the finance committee supports staff's recommendation to award the contract to. I mean, the way the staff report's going to be written, it's going to authorize the general manager to sign the
Sure.
agreements because we still have some final details to work out. So, but, if you guys are okay with that, then we'll incorporate that.
I'm agree with it, Mr. Chair, if you are.
Yeah, I mean, it does, I don't know if it makes that big of a difference, but.
I think it just carries a little more weight if we start doing that in all of our committees.
Yeah,
Or
no, I agree, but I also, not to get down a slippery slope, but I'm comparing it to our audit involvement and how we actually meet with the auditor and talk to them, like, I mean, I'm totally taking your guys, I haven't seen the proposals.
Yeah.
I'm taking your word for it that that it's the best and most qualified firm and best value for the district, and to that extent, I guess we recommend it.
And Wes negotiated them down quite a bit to get the quality.
We're actually paying less than only an aid, so,
Really?
yeah, how about that?
Good job.
We did have to modify the scope, in all fairness. They came in with a really high proposal. We met with them, Wes's team met with them and revised the scope and brought the numbers way down.
When they do this cost of service, how long is it good for? Are we doing it for 1 year, for 5 years, for 10 years?
That's part of what we need to talk about.
Okay.
They'll help us structure it however you want it. It could be up to 5 years. State law allows a rate structure for up to 5 years. Could be 1 year to 5 years. So that's
Okay. And when, is there a timeline that you expect you're gonna be talking about that with that? A timeline where you expect to come back with these numbers?
We are shooting for January 1 for the new rate adoption.
Right.
It may be a little optimistic. I think we have in this proposal January 14th. Because it's a tight timeline. We're going to do our best.
Until February.
So we'll have the Prop 218 hearing near the end of this calendar year, and then there's a 45-day process. So
And Director Snell, sorry to interrupt. Just to let you know, along the way though, we will be keeping the Finance Committee involved. So we'll be having meetings on that. So it's not going to be something where you have to weigh in on nothing. I know for this you're saying you don't know anything about it, but during the process you'll be.
I got one speaker on this item, Mr. Hunsinger.
No, I'm not gonna say
Okay.
anything else.
Cool. Okay. And then we'll move into, anything else on that?
That's it.
We'll move into other business. I have a speaker under oral. Anything else, Mike?
We've got some huge developments coming up. And our master plan is built around the idea that we're gonna go by Sandag figures of 1.4% growth rates. But just two of these huge developments can consume all of the projections over 10 years. At what point do we consider doing a new master water plan? Do we have, I think we're required that capacity fees have to be spent over a 5-year horizon. And if we have too much densification all of a sudden, things really go off the rails. So at what point do we do a new master water plan if we have all these developments coming in all at once?
Sure. Actually, this is a repeat question. Mr. Hunsaker brought this up to the board, so my answer is going to be the same. He is correct. 5-year is what you need if you don't have a planning document adopted by the board. If you have a planning document adopted by the board that follows the statutes, Sandag or whatever, land use agencies adopt, then you could go up to a 20+ year horizon for cap fees. But if you don't have any adopted document, 5 years is what the statutory. So it doesn't apply to us for that. And then going back to the first part of this question, the district does a water sewer study for every development that comes in. That compares what they're developing comparing to the master plan. So if a development is accelerating the use, we collect that money up front because we're going to collect cap fees on them, and then we accelerate the infrastructure that's necessary to do it. And especially if we're going to be looking at this annually, we won't be stuck in the rears on cap fees, especially when we start looking at this process annually. So with that, some agencies call that a SAMP, a sub-area master plan. We call it a water sewer study. So we implemented that process back in 2008, I believe, because when we realized that projects were coming in different than the densities approved in the general plan. So until the master plan becomes irrelevant with that process, that process keeps the master plan relevant because it compares master plan to proposed plan. When the city adopts a new general plan, the district will re-look at our master plan to see if there's significant differences that warrant a new master plan, probably go through the engineering committee on that and talk about it with staff internally before it's warranted. But no matter what, we have safeties in place since 2008 from an infrastructure standpoint, and now with the new committee direction and hopefully board direction, we'll have safeties in place with a cap fee funding process to ensure that acceleration or slowing down of development we're flexible and I guess athletic enough to adjust to it.